Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of College of the Dead, publisher of more than 1,000 independent comics. Chromium Man's one of my favorites. And this video is about Warner Brothers Discovery burning $1 billion on productions that they just decided were not good enough anymore. I will get into this video. Before we do, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications. Check this out from The Hollywood Reporter that just came out. Warner Brothers Discovery takes $825 million write-down on content following high-profile DC axings and TBS TNT cancellations. Now, what that a write-down is a write-down is when a company says, hey, this stuff is worthless, we're not going to continue with it, it was a mistake, we don't want to be in this business anymore, not this junk, we're going to switch out, and they basically report on their taxes that the stuff is a total waste. That is what happened with Batgirl. You probably heard about Batgirl getting canceled, also by Zaslav. This is from Cosmic Book News, one of my favorite websites. Matt McGloin writes, Batgirl plot details revealed following cancellation. Now, I'm not going to do a video on this today, but I'm going to include a link to this so you can see what the Batgirl storyline was supposed to be, the plot details, and it is terrible. You can tell there's no right way to make that film. All right, so this $825 million, does that include the $90 to $140 million on Batgirl? Doesn't even include that number. It's all this other stuff. The write-downs likely include shows like Chad and The Last OG, as well as projects like DC's Wonder Twins, with Batgirl likely to be written down next quarter, meaning the whatever amount they're going to write down and choose to pick, 90, 100, $150 million on Batgirl, that's going to be next quarter. So that doesn't even include this $825. They're already committed to over $1 billion in write-downs in this content that they basically is unusable up to Zaslav's new standards. He's not fooling around. He's real serious about getting things done right. And I'll show you why he's so serious and why you can kind of understand, like, expect quality and not woke stuff and not SJW stuff and not, crazy stuff to come out of Warner Brothers. I'm going to go over a little bit of the financials with you later. You'll get a sense of like, okay, I see. He's not playing games because he really can't play games. So just how much content has Warner Brothers Discovery axed since WarnerMedia merging just a few months ago? So far, $825 million worth. The company disclosed in a regulatory filing Friday, just this past Friday, that it has taken an $825 million write-down on content following the deal. That figure includes a $496 million impairment on content, meaning the content is all of a sudden considered worthless, as well as content development write-offs of $329 million. The development write-offs are probably things that are like work in progress, scripts that aren't going to get done, stuff that they started tinkering with, scripts that they purchased, that they started doing production resources and investments in, and they decided, no, this stuff's garbage, we're throwing it out. Quote, content impairments and development write-offs resulted from a global strategic review of content following the merger, the company wrote in the filing. One of the people who commented on one of my videos, and definitely comment on the videos, let me know what you think. It's a huge help. I appreciate that. Always like to see people's feedback, and I try to respond to everyone. They were writing like, well, it's not about the quality. It's really about, he's trying to save tax dollars. Look, it's really the quality, all right? The issue is everything they do has to support the brand of whether it's Batman or any of the other DC superheroes or any of their other properties. It has to build. It has to build on the momentum that they already have. They can't fool around. Discovery Plus actually has excellent distribution for their streaming services. They're in more countries than HBO Max is in. They're in almost as many countries as Netflix is in. They have really good distribution. But what works with distribution is quality. And the woke stuff doesn't work everywhere. You heard recently that Disney was not getting distribution, of course, in China for a lot of things, but also not getting distribution in the Middle East for a lot of their movies because of all their woke culture stuff. Zaslav is not fooling around with, okay, well, let's make woke stuff because it's going to make these group of people happy in this small part of America. He needs stuff that will sell worldwide through their existing distribution channel. That's how this whole deal with WarnerMedia was supposed to make sense. That they would get content that they could then use in their existing system so that they could combine things and cut expenses and just create a robust business. There's no room, there's no time for fooling around with trying to make people happy here and there and there and here. What works in the U.S. that they invest tens and hundreds of millions of dollars in must work in all the other markets that they do business in. Must. Otherwise, they lose momentum for the brand in those foreign markets. Imagine if they make a Batgirl movie. Okay, they were to make the Batgirl movie, but the Middle East is like, we don't really like what you're doing here. Okay, so even if it did okay in the U.S., they can't exploit their Batgirl brand and the whole Bat Universe brand in the Middle East? What? What's the purpose of that? So Jason Kilar, when he was in charge of WarnerMedia before he left the company when it was merged, he had a different idea what he was trying to do, and that's fine, but he wasn't trying to do what Zaslav is trying to do. The impairment and write-off figures were spread across the company's studio business, which includes the film and TV studios, its network business, which includes the linear TV networks. That means, regular TV and cable TV channels, and its direct-to-consumer business, which includes streaming services like HBO Max and Discovery Plus. The content impairments involve programs that had already been produced, or were in production, and the development write-offs were for content that was still in development. Makes sense. So they have episodes and content produced, and he's like, no, I don't want people to think this when they think of our properties. He's very, very good with that property stuff. I'm telling you, I'm going to give you a link to this. You can all search on Google, and YouTube by yourselves, but I'm going to give you a link to do it. And I'm telling you, this is your assignment. You must do this, please, for your own good. Listen to some of Zaslav's industry interviews before the merger. Listen to how he talks about brands. Listen to how he's passionately talking about the Food Channel. Look at how he talks about content, that they have a 10-year content deal with the BBC about their documentary-style programming and how important the brands are to him. He knows what he's doing. He really, really does. And it's going to be quality, and it's not going to be stuff made to please people that want to have big social agendas. Check this out. The dramatic figure of $825 million does not include Batgirl or Scoob Holiday Haunt, two movies that until this week were slated to debut on HBO Max's streaming platform. Those films will likely be accounted for in the next quarter. Okay, who knows how much that's going to total to be. It would, however, include a write-down related to the Wonder Twins. It's just a timing issue, that's why, when they made the decision to cancel it. Another DC project for HBO Max that was in pre-production and which was shut down in May. There's another movie industry thing I can share with you guys. There's a friend of mine who's a producer, and one of the things he told me was the campy version of Batman from 1966, 67, whatever. That's something that is not liked in Hollywood for commercial purposes. Like, it could be cutesy or whatever, but you don't want anything that looks like it's campy related to that. And honestly, this Batgirl stuff, especially when you hear the storyline, it really is kind of campy. It's a throwback to the 60s Batman type of stuff. It's very not commercial, not good. The filmmakers of Batgirl were told that the project would not move forward earlier this month, despite it being well into post-production. Sources at the company indicated that it planned to shelve the film for tax purposes, and the write-downs disclosed Friday would support that. Sure. Yeah, there's a tax benefit to canceling this stuff, but it's not about, they're not into this tax benefits. They could write down things all day long if they wanted to and claim that their library was a waste of money and that their stuff is all worthless. They're not trying to do that. They're trying to make money. but that means producing stuff that actually comes out good, that supports the brand and supports the international strategy of selling all of their film and TV projects. The filmmakers of Batgirl were, we talked about that. The second quarter write-down likely includes a number of programs that were axed at TBS and TNT, and also costs related to CNN Plus. So he shut down CNN Plus. That was a big chunk of money. They spent $300 million on developing CNN Plus and another $100 million on marketing CNN Plus before Zaslav was involved. So that could be $400 million of the $825 million. The ill-fated streaming service that Warner Brothers Discovery shut down just a few weeks after it launched. The filing also noted the company had $208 million in employee termination costs in the quarter. Employee termination costs? What's that? That means when you're an executive or you're established at a company and you get fired, they're going to give you multiple months, sometimes years of salary. Sometimes your contract, if you're a fancy schmancy person, will say you might get $1 million or $2 million when you're fired. So that's a lot of extra money. TBS and TNT have significantly cut back on programming since the merger, instead leaning into sports and unscripted fare. TBS cut comedies Chad, which had already completed production in its first season, Full Frontal with Samantha Bee, and Tracy Morgan's The Last OG, while TNT announced an end date for Snowpiercer. Scripted development at both networks was paused, and the company opted not to renew the deal to air the SAG Awards. That's the SAG Awards, Screen Actors Guild. On the company's earnings call Thursday, WBD streaming chief J.B. Perrett said that kids and animation content for linear and streaming, again, linear is like cable channels, direct-to-streaming films and shows for TBS and TNT were most responsible for the content recalibration, the stuff that they canceled. Specifically, content spent on Turner shows that did not have a path to generate sufficient ratings or incremental monetization potential. They're serious about making money. They're going to do stuff that makes money. They are. Does that mean you're going to get the DC universe the way you might want it or love it? No, it just means they're not going to produce stuff to please social agendas. They're going to do stuff to make money, which is a huge, huge positive just for the whole world to have a major media company focusing on let's do stuff that pleases fans. That equals making money. Warner Brothers Discovery, led by CEO David Zaslav and CFO Gunnar Winderfels, has said that it's seeking some $3 billion in cost savings in the next few years tied to the merger. Those savings will come in the form of merging technology systems and offices, as well as layoffs, though rethinking how and where it spends money on content is also clearly part of the plan. Quote, owning the content that really resonates with people is much more important than just having lots of content, Zaslav said on the company's earnings call Thursday. Quote, we will continue to have healthy content investment, but with these two content portfolios coming together, we see smart opportunities to do this at a much more measured pace than in the previous plans. So they're going to go slow, Perrett added. These are difficult decisions, but we are committed to being disciplined about a framework that guides our content investment for maximum return. See, maximum return. They're trying to make money. That is what their job is. That is what they're supposed to be doing. So they will continue to cut more. Let me know in the comments below if you think this is a positive thing, if it's going in the right direction. Always appreciate the comments. I also saw this article. This is funny because this is a little older. This is from July 31st. But this was the first version of the article from Bloomberg. Great White Makeover of Warner Brothers Discovery CEO Zaslav. And then later, apparently, just Bloomberg realized, let's update this to be a little bit less aggressively racist and just call it Warner Brothers Discovery Leadership Team Draws Ire Over Diversity. There you go. That's a better title. It sounds a little bit less ridiculous than Great White Makeover. How dare they? Despite being under pressure from lawmakers to diversify its staff, the new media giant has a notable amount of homogeny at the top. Now, in addition to just genuine business issues, how are you supposed to run a business? Answering to investors, maintaining relationships with executives, customers, vendors, the people that sell you stuff, other people making mistakes that you're responsible for. How are you supposed to do that but also say, okay, yeah, but we have to put this whole diversity thing in at the same time because diversity is so important. It's like there's so much work to get done, and there's so many things that go wrong. Even when you're running a business and like you're ahead of the game, things are going right, there are problems. You really, this is a very big company. It's under a tremendous amount of pressure. People are looking at this very closely. He's got to run a real business. It's got to be successful. I mentioned before about the financials, okay? I'm not going to do a whole financials thing here, but just to understand, this is their current balance sheet. Balance sheet is your assets, what you own, and your liabilities, what you owe. Okay? If you have cash, that's an asset. If you owe money in a loan, that's a liability. So assets minus less liabilities, that equals your owner's equity. That equals what your net value is. So if you have $10 million in the bank, it's pretty good, and you owe $5 million, your net value or book value of the company is $5 million. Doesn't include things necessarily that are hard to value, like intangibles, like properties and relationships with customers, but that's the basics. Look at the financials. Look at this. As of December 31st, 2021, it's not December 2022 yet. This is not a year later. This is just before merger, after merger. Before the merger, because Discovery had a successful business before, but their total liabilities was $21 billion. This is in millions. $21,031 million. So $21 billion in liabilities, money that they owed. Their assets were $34 billion. Okay, that's good. They have money. But after the merger, their liabilities went up to $89,293 million. So they have almost $90 million essentially that they owe. Now they have assets that they got from the merger. They got intellectual properties. They got goodwill. They've got film and television content rights. $30 billion. That's nice. It's nice to have that. But what you owe, you literally owe $90 billion. Yeah. Current liabilities means that it's owed soon. Like this needs to be paid soon. $14.4 billion. Non-current portion of debt, meaning that it's owed, but it doesn't have to be paid tomorrow. It's $51 billion. But all combined, they owe $89 billion, up from $21 billion. That's what Zaslav has to think about. And in addition to their results, when they reported their results recently, they had to report a loss of $3.4 billion, which was much bigger than they thought it was going to be. That was in the last 90 days. And they also projected $2 billion less next year in profit, earnings before interest and taxes, which is earnings before they take away certain expenses, but $2 billion less to basically pay down their bills next year, because they say that the projections were off that they got from AT&T when they took over WarnerMedia. That doesn't sound good. That's a lot of pressure. That's a problem. So, this article goes on about, he's got too many white people working there, basically. I'll read some of the article. As Zaslav prepared to take over Warner Brothers Discovery, one of the largest media companies in the world, he told friends in Hollywood that he would hire the best people he could find. Gender and racial diversity, while a factor, would not be his top priority, he said, according to multiple people he told. His methods have resulted in a notable amount of homogeneity, sameness, at the top of the new media giant. Given 6 seats on the new company's board, Zaslav and Discovery appointed a roster of all white male directors. Wow, they capitalized white. I've never seen that in Bloomberg before. The majority of the chief executive officer's 13 direct reports, many of whom were recent hires, are white men. Meanwhile, Zaslav in April fired Warner Brothers chief Ann Sarnoff, one of the highest-ranking women in Hollywood, without filling her role, and replaced WarnerMedia's heads of communications and finance with white men from Discovery. Well, first of all, just so you get a perspective on this, You know something? The people on the board of a company are very, very powerful. They could decide to get rid of Zaslav. He's been with this company, Discovery, I don't know, at least 15 years. I know, a long time. He built it up a lot, put a lot of his life into it, made the company a lot of money, and made himself a lot of money. But this is his life. So, as far as hiring people for the board, number one, you really do need people who are qualified because the board will be involved in making very powerful decisions. But they can also just decide to get rid of you, maybe because look how white he is. Oh, he's not diverse enough. Let's get rid of him. Well, that's not good. That's not good for him. It might be good for, whoever's pushing an agenda, but it's not what's right for the company necessarily, or for him, his life's work. As far as doing things like this, replacing heads of communications and finance with people from Discovery, well, why would he not do that? These are people he knows he can count on to do stuff. He's not judging them by their skin color. He's judging them by his experience of having go-to people. I do the same thing when I make stuff. I only use one person to make my logos for the comics I publish because she's great and I love what the work is. I can always depend on her. She always adds something to the process. You start to, it's a very small example, but still, you rely on people you can trust. Don't you think if he's managing $89 billion in debts, up from $21 billion, like literally not even a year ago. They added, what is that, almost $70 billion in debt. The results are not what they want them to be. The results are off. That's just what it is. And he's not going to put people in charge that he can count on? Lawmakers and advocacy groups say these staffing changes have highlighted concerns that Discovery is bringing its poor track record on diversity since merging with WarnerMedia in April. Lawmakers? What do they have to do with it? Advocacy groups are always ridiculous, so I understand, I'm advocating for something. I'm advocating something. Lawmakers should be concerned that they're paying their taxes, Warner Brothers Discovery, that they're able to stay viable, that people don't lose jobs. Not that they should try to tell them how to manage the company. China does that. Late last year, a group of U.S. legislators, including, of course, Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren, some men don't know her as Pocahontas, and Congressional Hispanic Caucus Chair Joaquin Castro sent a letter to the Justice Department, the DOJ, with concerns about the merger, including warnings about representation at the company and on the screen. People of color accounted for just 30% of Discovery's workforce going into the merger, according to its public filings, the lowest share of any major media company. And maybe that means invest more money in them. I don't know. I can't tell you for sure. But if they're serious, not about people's skin color, but if they're serious about taking care of their responsibilities, that's a good company. Just on the premise, that begins to be a good company. Quote, Discovery over the years has done a poor job in terms of Latino representation. I mean, I have to laugh. It's like, this is not just a regular business article. This is their equality section in Bloomberg. So it's, they're going to talk about this kind of stuff. So that does make some sense. So it's a little bit less crazy reading it like this. But if you're managing an extra $70 billion in debt, what you don't have to really be concentrating on is diversity. You need to be concentrating on, okay, how do we get out of this much debt? How do we have new business opportunities? How do we get rid of people who are troublemakers and are creating problems for the business, only out for themselves? Who can we not count on? Who do we have as an opportunity to give promotions to? One of the great things about running a business is people will have an opportunity to flourish, and they will do better and better and better and better. And it's great to give people opportunity. It's another great thing. And that's a great thing to do for society, regardless of people's skin color, but it's also a great thing for the business. And they try to pretend that, your diversity, equity, and inclusion officer is the most important thing because, they're going to identify whatever, somebody's unchangeable characteristics they were born with. Now, I've heard people say, maybe Zaslav isn't that great because he's got a chief global diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. And you have to understand, a company of this size, that's like having not having a human resources department. it's not even a question. You'd get shut down at this point if you didn't have a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. And people get so much of that stuff coming through college that it's expected when you go to work at a company now of any size that they have that. So I'll leave a link to this article as well, so you can kind of check this whole thing out if you want to. I just wanted to go over some so you get some, let's just say, color for what he's faced with as he's making these tough choices. And I think doing a great thing for media and for the DC characters. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, if you haven't already, please do give me a thumbs up. It's a huge help to the channel. Give me any comments you have. I'd love to see them, and you probably see I respond to all the comments. And I will see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.